Well, welcome, Awareness Explorers. It's great to have you back in the family and in our exploration of consciousness. And we are honored to have a guest explorer today that I have heard about her for many years, but I am not really familiar with her stuff, whereas Brian is practically a devotee. He's known her quite a while. Before we say hello to our guest explorer, which is Pamela Wilson. Let me just check in with Brian. How you doing?
I'm doing very well, Jonathan. I'm here in New York and the weather's lovely, and I'm sorry it's not the same for you where you are in California.
We got fires, we got pandemics, we got earthquakes, which gives a sense of urgency to awakening. But why don't we why don't we have you introduce our guest explorer since you know a fair amount about her?
Okie doke, thank you. Well, Pamela Wilson, I'm going to read a couple of lines from her website and then give you a little more personal introduction. Pamela speaks the truth of Advaita non duality, that the universe is one undivided whole. And for the last 20 years, she's traveled widely in the United States, Canada, and Europe, holding satsang and giving private sessions, and as well giving week-long retreats in Mexico, Costa Rica, France, United Kingdom, Canada, and the USA. And Pamela is very special to me because many, many years ago, uh, I accidentally came across on the internet the works of Ramana Maharshi, the great Indian sage from the mid 20th century, as well as Nisargadatta Maharaj. And I thought, this stuff is so great. Who's alive today that's teaching this? And so I just went on and did a search, and I found a website that listed all the teachers of non-duality, and there was Pamela Wilson, who was going to be at Sufi Bookstore in New York City. And so I went. So Pamela, yours was the first satsang I ever went to in my life.
Wow.
And it was just wonderful. And you used to come to New York a lot at Sufi Books and on that wonderful loft on Great Jones Street. And you were also there to introduce Locke Kelly to the community, and at the I forget the name of that beautiful place on 34th Street,
The
or
Open
36th
Center.
Street. No, it was
Yeah.
uh, yeah, I'll think of it and I'll add it to the end. Anyway, so for so long, I thought you were just a beautiful and wonderful teacher, and I'm so happy that you can now join us on Awareness Explorers. So welcome.
I'm honored.
Well, we're in a good position in that I know almost nothing about you, and uh, Brian knows a lot. So I'll begin the question. The one thing I do know, because you've been doing this a lot, and I've heard your name through the years, and um, I just learned that you were very much into the Sedona Method at some time. And I'm wondering if that was part of your awakening, or how did that, how, what is the history of how
Mm.
you got into this?
Well, in 1984, I had a house guest, Elizabeth Karageorgievich, and she. I went into her room and I was whining a little bit about my husband, saying, "Oh, I'm so sorry, everything isn't as da da da," because and she goes, "I don't want to hear about it. Take this donor method." And I went, because I had been doing TM and the advanced TM. So I had the meditating thing down. I just didn't have the serenity in between the meditations. So I was very happy to find the sort of walking meditation, which is the Sedona method.
And was that important in your uh, awakening to your true nature?
Well, Lester was really keen on helping the mind and the emotions really return back to balance and healthiness and simple responding. And so I was super steeped in understanding about how the mind works and the emotions. But when satsang showed up through Robert Adams, and it was after Lester had died, that's when there was the noticing that my role was not who I was. Whereas before, the role was determined to awaken and be a splendid, luminous, healthy role.
Right, right. That's a trap that a lot of us fall into. So what led you out of that trap?
Well, it's natural because, of course, we want to live what we love, what we know is true. Yeah, and for most of us, we're always befuddled and sort of surprised and occasionally shocked when the conditioning rises and, you know, disrupts relationships or business or daily flow. So there's this natural longing to return to balance and healthy beingness. So I thought it was me that woke up,
Hmm.
you know.
Surprise.
Yeah, and that's okay because me was very innocent and ardent and determined to return to freedom. So I have to bow to her doggedness. She is amazing. Go girl.
Well, you
And
know, go
evidently
ahead,
she
John.
did go.
Nicely said. She relaxed back into her beingness as well. Mm-hmm.
Well, speaking of doggedness, there's something that you and Jonathan actually have in common. Jonathan wrote a book called Conversations with Dog, in which the leading character is a golden retriever. And you wrote a book called A Golden Retriever's Guide to Joy, Helpful Hints for Humans. So I thought it was just what a wonderful coincidence that not only did you both write spiritual books about dogs, but they were both golden retrievers.
We used to call my dog the golden receiver.
Ah, I like that.
Everywhere she went, she was honored and adored and loved. And, yeah,
Yeah,
that was. Go ahead.
do- dogs in this culture are almost like gurus in India in that they open people's hearts, people become present, they um, become almost childlike in their connection with them. And it's beautiful to watch.
Yeah, yeah. Well, dogs don't ask much of us. And they have low standards for enjoying, which I really appreciate. And low standards for loving. You know, I remember one of my first ahas. I was in my 30s and driving around with my golden retriever, and we stopped at a stop sign, and these construction guys were over there, and my dog looked at them with was instantly smitten and wagging full body wag, and I go, oh my god, you love everyone. I was like shocked, like, oh no. I thought you just love me and a few people.
Another example of how you're not special, the ego's not special. Yeah.
Yeah, and dogs don't see the differences that we humans see among other humans. Dogs don't see race, and they don't see class. They just they just sense on a whole different level. I was wondering if similar things brought you to write your books. What brought you to write such a book? Maybe, yeah.
Well, for me, it was I wanted when I was quite young. I had one of those crises when you're a teenager, where I was desperate for truth and some clues. Mainly when I reflect back about emotions and how to be with the head and just how to be with the human tribal members. And I went to my library at school and I couldn't find anything about emotions. I mean, of course, this was a while back. Now you'd find a lot, but I wanted to write a book that would be that would resonate with anywhere from teenagers to 90-year-old fundamentalists great grandmothers, and that didn't have any spiritual jargon and was so direct and so simple, but deeply wise. And I thought, perfect dog.
We came to a similar conclusion. That's great.
Mhm.
I want to ask you, you mentioned that you went to Robert Adams, who's a teacher I've also heard of, and something about his satsang helped you to change how you were looking at this from Pamela wakes up to Pamela does not wake up, that awakeness wakes up, or
Mhm.
awakeness is there and you just let go into that. Tell me a little bit what that process was like.
Well, I was a spiritual workaholic, and with Lester's work, I mean, sometimes from 2 to 4 hours a day, and there's probably exaggeration in there, but it sure felt like that. I said to a friend, I've done enough spiritual practice for a small village. Where is this freedom stuff? And then you realize you are doing it for the small village called humanity. Um, so the first satsang I went to was with Robert Adams, and I walked in the room and there was this huge field of unshakable presence and stillness and peace. And it was like, like an exhausted traveler. I just stopped. And it was the first time I hadn't done anything, no mantra or sutra or releasing or long distance running or hiking. Sitting there basking was amazing.
Mm.
So that was, thank you, God. Oh,
And then you also were with Nilam for a while as well. Is that correct? Was
yeah.
that before, after Robert Adams, or?
After Robert passed, a group of us asked Nilam to come to Sedona to sit with the Robert Sangha.
Mhm.
We were all plunged into sorrow and loss and grief, and yeah. So it's
And from these experiences, and you hear a lot about people working hard spiritually, meditating, Sedona, whatever, and then kind of like your experience, they finally realize all that effort is actually getting in the way of being their true nature. So, what advice would you have for somebody who's kind of at that place where you were right when you were meeting Robert Adams?
Well, I think it's awfully choiceless, totally choiceless. The passion for freedom or wakefulness or clarity or to unveil the heart, return to compassion, it's choiceless. You're kind of drafted into it. It's once again, it's also not personal. I mean, because the amount of juice that's in the longing, it's kind of consciousness calling back its own. So I feel anybody who's questing is a sage because that's their resonance. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's our resonance is just bringing us back to the heart of everything. Yeah. So I would I'm not one of those that says stop seeking, you know, I invite you to notice, everyone to notice that it's longing and it's also the body mind that wants to return back to freedom and clarity and rooted unmovingness and big heart. So just to say yes. And then the mischief is time and progress and we're getting somewhere and all that. So just to notice that if it's real, that which the great promise, then it's not in time. It's already here. So I invite folks to look into the background of their body, or which I call behind the theater, or into the right side of the chest, Ramana's cave of the heart. the spiritual heart, he called it. And just to notice that that serenity, that absolute stillness is what's looking for itself. And it's the one that was taught it was so-and-so and it lived here and it was American or whatever. It's the one that is so receptive that it allowed itself temporary imprinting, temporary conditioning as it navigated humanness, which is, as we know, quite a conundrum.
I notice a lot of people come to you with particular questions about the states that they're in, either the states that they're in that they don't want to have anymore, or the states that somehow they aspire to having. And then I heard a quote from you when you spoke at the Science and Non-Duality conference that said, there isn't anything that's arising that doesn't bring its gift.
Mm.
And I thought that was beautiful. So when people come to you with their problems and say, I'm just not there yet, or this is happening and I don't want it, is that something that you realize that what they don't want is not necessarily something that they have to avoid or get rid of or work around, but an opportunity?
But, we all notice how, here's that word again, dogged emotions are and reruns are and replay in the head is. So I invite folks not to touch the content, but notice what function is moving and then who's animating that function. Because there's no way you can arm wrestle with consciousness or life. I mean, people have been arm wrestling for, I don't know, millions of years with all this stuff. And nobody has tamed it or quelled it or even liberated it. So finally, there's this moment, and Stillness once showed me this great image of like a gorgeous Asian warrior with his sword fighting for his life. And every movement was matched. And then there was no way he was going to win. So he finally went to his knees and bowed his head, waiting for his head to get chopped off, which is another parable. And he noticed nothing happened. So he got curious, lifted his head and noticed he was in a circle of mirrors. So the reason he couldn't prevail was he was fighting himself. And the mirror image was just as masterful a swordsman as he was. And yet he noticed when he went to his knees and bowed his head that all the other swordsmen were on their knees and bowed their head. So for me, that's the result of, decades and decades and decades of curiosity and inquiry, is that everything responds beautifully to being honored and respected. And then you can show it its true nature. That if I'm trying to get rid of something, it has to dig in. It's like a law of nature.
And our trying to get rid of our problems or the current situation we're in kind of keeps the prison bars fully there.
Yeah, they're also imaginary prison bars. But since imagination there's such a clue in that word mage, the original magician called life or consciousness or intelligence, it wants us, it's inviting us to notice everything. Yeah. So the noticing is an ongoing invitation. Yeah.
You mentioned
You use
earlier.
the term, the background of the body, which I was intrigued by. And also, I'm not familiar with Romano's right side of the chest idea, but ideas related to the body that way, especially as they are in awakening. I'm wondering if you can say more about what you mean by those.
Yeah. The word theater actually has the word Thea in it, which means God, Theo or Thea. And your whole torso area, if you feel into it, is a theater. There's this wide open space, and then there's comings and goings and passionate displays, and then oceanic sorrows, and then protests, and it's pretty exciting. If you're relaxed, you're going, whoa, okay, here we go again. So it's kind of cool to notice that all those protestings and passions, and a lot of them have a lot of clear seeing in them, because they're responding and reacting to human conditioning that is not balanced. When we get a whole outrage thing rising up, it's because clear seeing is going, oh my God, you're kidding. What? So I really like honoring the clear seeing inside, and honoring that emotions, they actually love what's real and true. Yeah. Now, then the mind can interpret, as a good stage director or screenwriter can. And so our job as the background is, we're actually theater managers, really. It's like, okay, kids, all right, hello. And then you just add a little compassion and reassurance. And then I like to show the entire troupe its true nature, because otherwise they'll rest. So much of spiritual practice will allow the body mind to rest and the emotions to rest. But the next heartbeat, they'll all be up in arms again with just cause, or just because they're tired or whatever. So it's kind of I once asked stillness, I go, hey, here I'm resting. I know I'm no one. I don't need defending because I'm eternal. Why are there all these old-fashioned services? And stillness said, well, you didn't show them their true nature. I went, oh, I was going around the world helping friends see their true nature, but I forgot to do it inside. Mm-hmm. So that's my play. That's my passion.
So it's sort of like we think we're actually the characters we're playing on this stage filled with drama, and when we step backstage from the stage manager's point of view, we see that it's all just a play, that we're not really King Lear, as Rupert Spira might say.
Yeah.
Now, I also know from your website that you do sessions with people. And I'm wondering, it's always good to ask people into Advaita what they do, which is an oxymoron. So what do you do with your not doing? So what do you do in your not doing sessions?
Oh, the usual. Life carries on, gardening, cooking, buying produce.
No, I mean, when you do one-on-one sessions with people.
Oh, that's I call it the magical mystery tour.
Okay.
Yeah, because we can start anywhere with, oh, I don't like my neighbor, or, whatever. And we just keep honoring and honoring, and all of a sudden there's this just like deep, unshakable presence that gets unveiled, because all the movements are animated by the unmoving. So when we honor the movements, then they can know themselves and rest back. And then there's more felt sense of space, which is actually all we ever wanted. We didn't want all these highfalutin enlightenment words. It's just like, could we have some relief? Could we have some felt sense of space and oneness?
So I'm fascinated by the whole idea of honoring. Is honoring meeting whatever is arising as if it is all the one? Or how would you put it?
Yeah, absolutely. because it is, not as if.
Right. Noticing that it is.
That's it. And, our mind out of love wants to clear the inner field for us so we can have that yummy sense of well-being and rootedness and all is well. But it goes about it in a kind of martial way, a warlike way. So I used to say with my releasing, I was definitely making war to get to peace, which is very human.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the word honoring because I haven't heard that so much. I sometimes hear people say love or allow. Are those synonyms, or is it slightly different to honor the current made up story we are traveling?
Mm. Well, I actually, the insight arose from reading something from Papaji. Somebody
Uh-huh.
asked him to sum up his teachings, a young Western journalist, in one sentence, which actually somebody should put in a book because pretty much all sages have done that. And Papaji's response was, look within, approach everything with devotion and gratitude.
Ah,
Stay as heart. And I remember reading that and going, and this was even after the shift, I'm going, what? Because I was still in my Sedona, with my Zen stick whacking everything. And I'm going, okay, well, I'll try it because when you get a seasoned sage that sums up their pointers in one sentence, you're going to give it a go, right?
yeah.
So I looked within, I looked at the mind, and I approached it with devotion and gratitude, which is my way of like an inner bow, but a very sincere one. I had been doing that out and about in the world with people, but I hadn't thought to do it inside. And the mind was so surprised at being met with sincere devotion, gratitude, and respect that it blew open. I mean,
Ah,
it had often come to rest, of course, through grace or a good hike or beautiful music or hearing the truth, but it totally blew open. And I'm going, oh my God, it worked. Then there was really like, oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. And then occasionally after that, it would go back into, whining, complaining, or replaying or whatever. And then since then I finally got who it was. I went, okay, God, what are you doing? And then it would start laughing. So now occasionally if I don't sleep well, of course, the body mind will start some old-fashioned stuff, but at least there's kindness and respect now.
So when you say approach everything, you really mean everything.
Yeah, and that includes aversions, natural aversions. Yeah. And I'm still working on it. I haven't quite approached plastic with devotion and gratitude yet. I'm saving some aversions for my old age.
uh-huh. We all have our political figures that we are working with as well, probably. I really like what you said with that, Pamela. When I did a book 25 years ago in which I interviewed 40 spiritual leaders, and I asked them all the same question, which was, what's your best advice for spiritual seekers?
Mm-hmm.
And I was surprised that the most common answer was to approach everything with gratitude.
Oh.
I hadn't expected that. And it was interesting, like the Dalai Lama said that, the late Mother Teresa said that. And it really tapped me into that. and of course, in psychology, they have about, you should keep a gratitude journal. But this is really a moment to moment angle of which you're approaching everything. It's not something you so much, I'm grateful for my legs. It's more like everything is a gift.
Yeah, and even the gnarly gifts. Yeah. So the other pointer, there were I asked because I don't want to figure everything else out myself because I worked so hard for all those decades that all of a sudden after the shift it was like, okay, I'm not going to try and figure out anything. I'm just going to ask. So I asked, and so I said to Grace, okay, if there's no time and nothing is what it appears to be, show me a way to show friends how to liberate everything in no time at all. And then that was the first thing it showed me was that Papaji quote, look within, approach everything with devotion and gratitude. The second pointer was Lao Tzu's summation of his pointings, was be like a kind-hearted grandparent inside. And then the third thing was Ramana's self-realization happens when the I thought goes into the cave of the heart on the right side of the chest during the day. So that was almost each day, Grace gave me a pointer, which is then now my little music, my sat song that I just, in a million different ways, keep repeating.
I wrote those down. Those are definitely keepers.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And when speaking of gratitude, I think when most people try to create a gratitude practice for themselves, they say, okay, what am I grateful for? Well, I'm grateful for the beautiful flowers outside my window. I'm grateful for my loving parents or children or whatever. It doesn't occur to them to say, I'm grateful for this pain in my knee. I'm grateful for the annoyance I feel when someone cuts me off while driving. But but those two, right?
Actually, if you relax into annoyance and irritation, you can get really high.
Yes. I noticed that. You can be happy even when you're sad and upset because backstage you're happy. It's only on stage where all the upset is happening.
I think of all of us is we're human, we're divine, but much more fun is we're elemental beings. We're natural beings, right? And there's a great joy when inner growling arises and you allow it. And it doesn't have to even come up to the head because that's when it gets ranty, which rants are okay too. But just like being with inner growling is like almost as good as sunlight,
Right.
Yeah, if you don't have a judgment about it, it's all energy moving through, which is all the divine.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I remember in maybe it was the third satsang or satsang I ever went to with you back down at Sufi Books, and you would always start with a period of silence, and there was a way to get in through the bookstore, but then there was also a door that led to the street, and there would always be latecomers, and they would come in through this door to the street, and it was winter, and they would take off all their coats, and they would sit down, and they would make all this noise, and inside I was saying, this is supposed to be a moment of silence, and all these people are making all this noise, and then just something happened. I don't know how it happened, but it's just something popped and said, oh, wait, that's not the silence she's talking about. She's talking about the silence that was already here before those noisemakers arrived, and it didn't go away even when they were here. And I will never forget that.
That's wonderful. Yay.
And
Yeah, we always think
it was
we
also the
always
same.
think we can.
That's, Jonathan,
Go on,
we're
Brian.
so eager to talk. No, go ahead, Jonathan.
Well, we always think that we can have peace or be spiritual once the conditions are just the way we want.
Mhm.
And that lesson that no, the conditions are always perfect. It's our approach to now that is our attitude, our angle, or whatever you want to call it, that is the key.
Mm. And it just helps to have even the body and the mind know themselves as space, because before, my joke is I felt like one of those crumpled toothpaste tubes where there was just no room in there. My body felt like that. And now it's like,
Mm.
oh, there is so much space. I can have lions and tigers and bears and swooping, cranes and clunky work boots clomping through. It's like, wow, there's so much room. And there's actually, even though there's preference, we'll all have preference for what we love and resonate with. And preference is really honored here. But also aversion is honored here. It's like, oh, aversion has so much clear seeing in it. So I don't know. I'm sort of making friends with everyone except for plastic. Oh, and the fleas and ticks. So no, actually fleas are kind of cute. Actually,
That's pretty far. That's pretty far. Maybe you'll have to sometime in the future, like those two Buddhist monks who thought that they were totally okay with everything, that they didn't have anywhere to go, so they went and did some shoplifting in order to get themselves arrested, so that they could they could honor getting in trouble with the law as well.
no, thank you.
Yeah, I think I'll skip that.
I mean, when we think of it's so funny how the mind offers sometimes experiences. Like sometimes here it'll offer, well, you haven't had that. And I go, no, 35 million years of existence. I'm sure I've already had that experience.
Sure, sure. But you're not saying that we should create experiences. If we have an aversion to an experience, it's the aversion that we honor.
Yeah, beautiful. That's it. Yeah, because aversion is also just an ancient survival skill. Mm.
I like how you said that with a lot of space, aversions or whatever aren't the problem, um, and that we can love even that.
Mhm, mhm.
Well, another thing you said in that wonderful sand talk was that everything's made of love. Everything is in service to this one.
Some of it's a little heavy-handed. We go, okay, chill out.
But it didn't sound heavy-handed at all, because actually that was so delightful. That you talked about divine mischief, and there was a lot of laughter too.
But no, I mean that the life can be a little heavy-handed.
Oh, life. I thought
Life
you
can
meant
be, no, not me. I'm kind of like light-fingered, not to go to jail. But
right.
yeah, no, life can be really heavy-handed. So that's another thing I really like honoring is how resilient everyone is. Especially since during these times where, I mean, I'm always amazed by parents being spacious with, because kids are elemental beings and you try and tame them and you do your best and everything like that. But just these times of people having to shelter in place and then if there's economic pressure and feeling contained in your home and I mean, I'm just bowing to human resilience and courage. And then when they get fed up, I bow to that too, because yeah, get fed up, get big, speak your truth. Mm.
Well, soon we're going to have you lead us in a guided meditation, but I'm wondering if there's any final words of wisdom or advice you have for the seekers listening to our podcast.
Well, just, you know, one of our cult, I don't know if it's true in all cultures, but at least in the West, one of the early conditioning and imprinting is not to honor yourself, not to have this respect, turn around inside and do a bow to the courage and innocence and resilience and doggedness and exhaustion and resistance and help and all that stuff. If we honor ourselves inside, that is the fastest way to dissolve containment and conditioning, because it sends so many deep signals and invitations that the war is over. Because when only a sage would honor within, you know, because usually the whole deficient sense of self, it's all the mind is always about berating it and putting it down. So this movement by kindness, compassion, and clarity, really, it dissolves all of the spells, because it's really just hypnosis, a repetitive hypnosis that keeps us small and contained and not knowing our majesty and our dignity and our simplicity.
Well said. That's the last thing we think of.
I know. Well, Muktananda, I remember I was lucky. I got Shaktipat from Muktananda, and it must have been 80s, early 80s. And he would always say, love yourself, for God dwells in you as you. And I'm going, how do you get from I don't like myself to love yourself? And so I just set that aside. I said, clueless, don't know, can't touch that one. But honoring yourself is very different. Love, we have a big file on love, that, well, it has to be immaculate or luminous, but honoring yourself is just like going, wow, like that inner namaste. I'm honoring that divine resilience and intelligence itself. Each one of us, actually all beings have equal intelligence, and then part of the play is this apparent less than or more than, and all beings have equal creativity, and all beings have equal oceanic love in them. So it's like, wow, just noticing. To me, often the portal, so to speak, is noticing the resilience and that we're still here. Despite, each one of us has encountered anywhere from horrific to shocking to sorrowful to devastating moments, and we're still here. Who is that one who's seen it all, felt it all, and is still willing to be here? Who is that one? So I really bow to everybody's hearts. Ramana Maharshi, great sage. I call him Grandpa, super grandfather, one of the Lao Tzu's kind-hearted grandparent. He invited us to notice we actually have two hearts. So innocently, we can just look within. So we have the human heart. Sometimes it helps to close our eyes. Human heart slightly to the left of the center of the chest. In India, they call it Shiva's drum, meaning that ancient divinity, life itself, is feeding the human heart. And then just being curious about the space in your right side of your chest. Just being curious the way innocence would. Not knowing, but just looking or feeling or gazing. You can trust what's felt or noticed. Noticing invokes wisdom. What's felt there? It could be defended or open. Either way is fine. And as awareness or innocence, we could say hello to that presence there. Sometimes it feels like absence, like nothing's there. Same, presence, absence. Same. And then as devotion and gratitude, just bring it a gift, maybe the gift of your respect or the constancy of your being with it for just a few more heartbeats. And instead of asking Ramana's great question, who am I? Awareness can ask, who are you? To that presence in the cave of the heart on the right side of the chest. Just inviting it to reveal itself in any way it likes. How beautiful to have one heart that has a steady, audible rhythm and another heart that's silent. And if it starts to uncontain itself, just express gratitude or confirm with yes or without any words. All the heartbeat in the human heart is ever saying is thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And just noticing how the formless spiritual heart can cradle the human heart and spread into the torso area, soothing and balancing and permeating. And just even inviting space to get even bigger, uncontaining itself from the body. Spaceless space, Robert Adams called it. Spaceless space. Lao Tzu's kind-hearted grandparent. And just notice that awareness is formless and space is formless. Everything is made of formlessness. So like water meeting water, formless awareness meets formless space. So could we rest here forever? Why not? Why not live as substratum and warm, benevolent, all-welcoming space. Rooted and flowing. Namaste, everyone. Bowing to your dear hearts. Bowing to this one mind, one heart, one warrior belly strength substratum.
That was wonderful. I really like that experience of feeling my spiritual heart on the right side. I haven't had that experience before, or that type of instruction before, and it's really a great and simple way in.
Yeah. When the going gets tough, we can always take refuge in the right side of the chest. It's like, hello, help.
Right.
Like having your own Ramana or sage cave.
Right.
In the body.
We carry it with us wherever we go. So it's not like we don't have to wait to attain some special state in the future when we carry that with us wherever we go.
Well, thank you so much, Pamela. It's been a great honor to meet you after all these years of hearing your name and really imbibing what you have to offer.
Likewise, Jonathan.
And for me, after all these years of feeling New York's feeling of being bereft without you here, but now that we have you on Awareness Explorers, it's like having you back. So thank you so much.
Happy to return to Manhattan.
Yes.
Yeah. Bowing to you both and all listeners.
Yeah. And to our listeners, we have a bunch of guided meditations at awarenessexplorers.com. We have a Patreon page where you can get stuff for supporting us, and we really appreciate the support. And the way to support you and your friends is let people know about this, because as Brian says, you can say it, Brian, that what you say at the end of our podcast. Oh, well, okay.
What? Keep exploring?
You say the something like the best way to support those you love is by...
Yes, because knowing yourself as awareness is the greatest gift you can give yourself and those you love.
Yes.
Well, I like that.
Thank you. I think we wrote it together.
Till next time, friends, always keep exploring.
Yes.
Keep exploring.
Keep bowing.
Keep bowing. Thank you for listening to Awareness Explorers. To learn more, you can check out our website at awarenessexplorers.com. Please subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast app. We'd love it if you would post a review. And please share our link on Facebook and with family and friends, because knowing yourself as awareness is the greatest gift you can give yourself or someone you love.